Billionaire's infant couldn't be calmed at the hotel. Then a black housekeeper stepped in, a luxury hotel pulsed with quiet control until a thin wail sliced through its marble calm. An infant's cry echoed down the 8th-floor corridor, fraying tempers and pulling eyes to a suite guarded by assistants and anxiety. Inside, a billionaire paced, helpless before a child who refused every trick. Bottles, rocking, warm baths, white noise, even a private nurse on standby. Staff drifted near and retreated, fearing blame more than the sound. Guests complained. Managers whispered. The baby's face burned crimson with exhaustion, and the father's pride cracked into panic. In a place designed to solve any financial problem, nothing worked. Then a housekeeper paused her cart, listened closely, and noticed what everyone else had missed. The hotel sold silence as a signature amenity. Soft carpets swallowed footsteps. Hidden speakers hummed a gentle hush. Guests paid for the kind of stillness that made decisions easier and mistakes less likely to occur. That afternoon, a storm of schedules blew in with a tech magnate, his security team, and his only child, an infant unsteady in the new world of air-conditioned air and the rhythms of strangers. The suite filled with curated comfort, filtered light, a custom crib, a sterilized kettle, monogrammed blankets. It all looked right. The infant had been born into expectation. Every need was forecasted. Every solution was premium. Yet the needs of a baby are not a spreadsheet, and the rhythm inside a small chest does not answer to status. By the second hour of crying, the manager had rotated 3 senior staff through the door, each armed with an approved list of soothing methods. By the third, the hallway bore the tired looks of desk agents and Bell staff drafted as runners, feathers of worry sticking to their uniforms. Down the corridor, a housekeeper named Amara moved from room to room with the steady grace of someone used to being both visible and unseen. People noticed the tidy corners she left behind more than the person who made them. She knew guests' habits by the imprint they left. A chair turned toward the window, a glass with fingerprints too high for a child's hand. She heard the baby's cry change, sharper, then hoarse, then jagged. It wasn't just fussing. It was fatigue tipping into distress. Amara pushed her cart forward, paused, and watched how others looked away. Years had taught her when to step back for her own safety. But they had also taught her that when a child needs an adult, more than an adult needs permission. The corridor carried a quiet tension that had nothing to do with the baby and everything to do with hierarchy. A senior concierge hovered near the door with guarded politeness. An assistant clutched a tablet, reviewing a cascade of suggestions from a parenting consultant who had never met the child. A nurse stood ready, but deferred to instructions that kept changing. The father moved between rooms as if motion could buy relief. He was a man used to outcomes. The baby's body did not recognize that command. There is a particular loneliness that grows inside a crying child. Breath catches. Muscles lock, and the world becomes too loud for the small heart trying to keep a beat. The signs were there. The baby's fists were tight, shoulders lifted, and the rhythm of crying peaked and crashed without finding a bridge to calm. Amara had seen that pattern in other places, on subways, in crowded waiting rooms, where a mother's hands eventually learned the tempo that could carry a child from storm to shore. She also knew that comfort is not always a technique. Sometimes it is a memory the body recognizes. Across the hall, 2 guests requested room changes. The manager weighed refunds against reputation. The father authorized whatever it took. Money moved. The cries did not. Amara wiped her hands, stepped closer, and spoke, not to the father, not to the staff, but softly to the situation itself. She explained that she had raised children and cared for others' babies when work demanded that life happened on someone else's clock. She said she had a method that didn't require new equipment or expert approval. She would need a quiet corner, a breathable blanket, and permission to reset the room's rhythm. The manager hesitated. Liability lived everywhere. But the nurse, whose face had softened with worry, nodded first. Then the father gave a small, desperate consent that sounded like surrender. Inside the suite, the air felt staged, too cool, too scented, too bright. Amara opened the balcony door just a few inches to let in the city's muted pulse. This faraway hum sounded like living. She dimmed the lights, not to darkness, but to dusk, where edges soften and the body stops bracing. She removed the perfume diffuser. She asked that the screens be stilled and that everyone sit down. Status does not help a baby sleep. Stillness does. She rewashed her hands, warmed them under the faucet, and lifted the baby with practiced care, supporting the back with her forearm and letting the infant's head rest in the open space between her palm and shoulder. She adjusted the tiny hips until the pelvis rested heavy and safe. The crying did not stop, but it shifted, puzzled by the unfamiliar steadiness. Then came the rhythm. Not a rock, not a bounce, something slower. A sway that matched the length of an inhale and the weight of an exhale. She hummed, not a song, but a tone low enough to vibrate through her bones. She let the baby's ear rest near her heartbeat, a metronome older than machines. With her free hand, she traced a slow circle on the baby's back, down the shoulder blade, across the ribline, and up again, an orbit that told the nervous system it could return to Earth. The nurse stepped back, listening. The father watched, bewildered. The crying thinned from a blade to a ribbon, from a siren to a tremor. Amara paused when the baby paused, moved when the baby's breath hitched, and never imposed speed on a body already overwhelmed. She wasn't performing a trick. She was matching a tempo the room had forgotten. Outside the suite, someone paced with a phone pressed to an ear, retelling the scene as if spectacle were the point. Inside, the point was small and human. The baby's fists loosened, the shoulders lowered, the mouth softened into a shape that could accept comfort. And then, as if a door inside finally opened, the air left the child's lungs on a long sigh that sounded like permission to rest. Silence arrived, not like a switch, but like a tide withdrawing. The baby slipped from cry to murmur to the damp, hiccuping breaths that announced surrender to sleep. The room exhaled with the child. Relief carried a cost. Eyes turned toward Amara with a mix of gratitude and something heavier, an awareness of what had just been required to be noticed. The father reached for his wallet before he reached for his words. It was reflex, the only language he trusted to show value. Amara did not move toward the bill. She adjusted the infant into the crook of his arm, showed him how to hold the small body so that the weight rested. The head was aligned, and he was reminded to breathe slowly enough for the baby to follow the pattern. The nurse watched and memorized the posture. The assistant's screens flickered with unread messages, finally allowing them to wait. Then the other reality stood up in the room. For hours, people had been circling a problem, applying cost and authority to it while passing by the black woman in the hallway, whose experience was treated as incidental. The father's eyes, clear now in the dim light, found the truth he had been trained not to see. The hierarchy that had organized the scene had also blinded it. He offered thanks, the kind that leans on apology without fully naming it. Amara met it with the same evenness she brought to the child. She did not need an audience. She did not need a speech. She required the understanding to move from this room into the building's habits, so that next time a baby cried, or a guest needed something not listed on a menu, people would look for wisdom where it lives, not only where it's priced. The baby slept, the city's hum whispering through the small gap in the balcony door. In that hush, the father absorbed the weight of a lesson that had nothing to do with childcare and everything to do with who gets believed in a room full of power. Morning comes differently when a crisis has passed. Housekeeping boards fill with assignments. Coffee travels like a ritual. The suite door opened to a quieter world. The infant woke, fed easily, and did not return to the spiral that had ruled the previous day. The nurse submitted a note to the hotel. Reduce artificial scent, adjust lighting gradually, teach parents the steady sway pattern, and, crucially, consult the people who hold foundational care skills. Regardless of title, the manager updated training guidelines, not as a PR gesture, but as an operational shift. Seek input from staff whose day-to-day experience creates solutions that cannot be bought. Recognize the expertise of workers who are often misread, underestimated, or ignored. Invite them into the first conversation, not the last resort. As for the father, his public life continued to be featured in headlines and quarterly calls. But in the small private world of a nursery and a stroller and late nights in strange cities, he practiced what he had learned. When he returned to the hotel months later, he asked for Amara by name, not to demand her labor, but to advocate for her promotion. He funded training designed by the staff who actually knew the building's heartbeat. He learned to notice who stands just outside the doorway of every problem, carrying the tools that don't fit into a luxury brochure. Patience, pattern, presence.